If it feels like your podcast workflow, your agency workflow, and your episode workflow is an absolute hot mess, being held together by duct tape, by all of your notes all over your notebook, not getting put into tasks in your to-do list, how to juggle managing multiple podcasts without dropping the ball, and all of the workflow components that go into that. Let's get into it.
Hey, welcome back to Behind the Workflow. My name is Taly,
And I'm Simona.
and I'm so excited to be here. And I'm happy to have you back, Simona.
I know, me too. Watching your biweekly marketing update made me feel very lonely because you were all alone and I was supposed to be there with you, but all for good reason. But I'm very happy to be back behind the workflow with you.
So tell us, where were you? What was going on?
Yeah, so I was traveling around speaking at a few different conferences. The first one was Podcast Movement Evolutions in Chicago. Then I went to Pennsylvania to speak at the Growth Now live event. And then I went to Nashville to speak and lead a panel at the Podcasting Moms Conference, which was actually really cool because I got to see a lot of different friends and actually meet some of our beta users for Northflow, which was really, really cool. So lots of fun.
That is so fun. I
That was
definitely
really
had the FOMO watching all the Instagram stories. I'm like, I wish I was there, but
fun.
it's okay. I'm glad you had all the fun.
Thank
And it's
you.
good to hear all that happened and some of the people that you got to meet. So let's jump in. In today's episode, we want to talk about like how podcast managers and podcast agencies how they're able to basically juggle multiple shows. And who better to ask than our very own Simona here, who has her own agency. So the question here is like, if you found yourself wondering like, how do people run 5 different podcasts and for themselves and for clients without going off the rail, this is definitely for you. So listen in, and we're going to be pulling some insights also, Simona, from podcast the community. So actually
Mm.
put a question out there a few days ago, or actually might be weeks even, basically asking folks like in the groups that I'm part of on Facebook, mainly like podcast movement community, podcasting for women's in business. And I was just asking them like, hey, how do you stay on top of multiple shows? And we got some really good replies. So I'll share those during this episode as well.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear them. I love that. This is going to be so fun.
Yes. All right, Simona. So let's start at the beginning. When you're managing multiple shows for different clients, what's the first thing that keeps it all from turning into a chaos? Can you tell us a little bit about what you do? What's your current process? How do you stay sane?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. So I really have adapted over the last few years. I mean, we've been in business for quite a few years now. I've been podcasting since 2018, and the agency's been operating since 2021, but I was freelancing before that. And there's two components that I think are really, really important. The first one is organization, and the second one is having a strategy. So when my clients come to me, new clients or people that come over from another production company, another team, and come into the agency, the very first thing that I often hear, I want to say 9 times out of 10, is everything is so organized, everything is so streamlined. And I think that's a really, really important place to start because I've said this before on past episodes, but if your own personal process is chaotic, everything else is going to be chaotic. And to be able to run multiple shows and to be able to hit timelines and hit them in advance is really important. And it all comes down to how organized you are as an organization, as an agency, as a team. And I'll share this story with you, Taly. Someone came to me a couple months ago and was saying how they were working with somebody else and they were not getting their episodes to them until the morning of the episode going live. So let's say your
Oh,
episode
wow.
goes, could you imagine? Like that's a no, like I've recorded in like last minute and stuff like that in the past, but I would never deliver an episode on a Tuesday morning if it's going live on Tuesday. That's crazy. And then it makes me think, well, what's going on within the agency? What's wrong behind the scenes? Where's the breakdown in communication that isn't allowing them to deliver the content faster than that? It's crazy.
I love how you have strategy as one of the first
Mhm.
thing that you work on with your clients. And it's actually backed in by research too. So according to the podcast host, nearly 50% of the podcasters they actually stop publishing after just a few episodes,
Yeah.
and often because they lacked of a clear path, like a
Mhm.
clear strategy behind it.
Mhm. Well, exactly. You need to know what the show is about, who is it for, who is it serving. So one of the things that I ask my clients when we first get started, even if they're an existing podcaster, is what is the show about? Who is it for? And why do they care? If you can't answer those three questions, it's not clear enough. If you can't answer those questions, then how are people supposed to know what you are going to be like talking about and sharing and how the episode helps them? And I was reading something today that essentially says, I don't know if you've ever heard this term, but people will say the riches are in the niches. Have you heard that? Yeah.
Yes, from
Yeah.
Pat Flynn,
Yeah,
actually, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, exactly. I actually had no idea where it came from and I was reading it today, but that paired with the fact that the podcasts that are going to be most seen, the podcasts that are going to be the most known are not the shows that are going wide. They're the shows that are going deep on a topic. They are serving a specific purpose, and I think that's going to be really important as we continue to podcast and create content and even from an agency point of view. But if you pair that, so if you bring that back now, that's your strategy. And you can't have a clear strategy without organization. So you need them both in tandem.
Yes, so the next thing I want to ask you about is batching. Like, because this was one of the most popular things that I actually heard as I was asking people, like, how do you handle multiple shows? And one of the people that actually replied, his name is Paul, he replied from the podcast movement group. He said that he uses like a master Excel list and he has like every task per episode, like writing show notes, editing, like audiograms. And then what he does at the end, he sorts it by deadline, like when that specific task is due. So it's basic like he's hacking Excel, like he's creating his own do it yourself batching system. He's trying to stay organized. So I love to hear how you do it and how some of your clients have done it in the past as well.
Absolutely. So, the very first place that we start, very similar to Paul, is with a production schedule. So, every single one of our clients has a production schedule. And also, I will say this is a feature that you can access in Northflow as well, creating your own production schedule and like your timeline of what episodes are going
Mhm.
live and when. So, definitely check that out. But we start with a production schedule for every single client, and that helps us plan. So, it helps us plan the guests, it helps us plan the episodes, it knows exactly what is going live and when. And so that helps us stay more organized so that we can batch. So if you look at your calendar, let's say, and if you look at your production spreadsheet, and you know that you need 5 episodes for the month of May, or you know 4 episodes for June, or whatever that is, now you can go back and you know exactly what you need to fill. You can find guests or plan solo episodes from there, and then you can time block, right? So you can do 2 or 3 recordings in a week if you have the time. You can do a couple of solo episodes batch together when you have time. So knowing what you're doing in advance helps you so much when it comes to the batching process, because nothing is worse than sitting down and planning your content without knowing what exactly it is that you're recording. So we're going to do an episode on this in a couple of weeks, Taly, but our own process is so important. How do we batch content? Well, if we know we're meeting, 1 week and we're going to do 2 or 3 episodes, we're going to try and record those in one shot. How are we going to do that if we don't know what we're talking about? So you have to get clear on what you're putting out there and when you're doing it.
Yes, and it's not just about speed, it also helps maintain like your creativity
Mm-hmm.
rhythm, especially when your brain doesn't have to switch from one gear to the other and you know like what you're going to be talking about. It's just a good process overall. So I
Yeah.
love when we do the batch recording, by the way.
Me too. And I want to add in one more thing too. There was a study that was done by Grace and Vine that says batching can actually increase your productivity by 40%. So if
Oh
we think
wow.
about, right? So if you think about your productivity overall, not just in podcasting, but when you can get organized, like I was talking about earlier, organize your content, and then you know where you're headed and it makes it easier to batch. But then you've just saved yourself so much time on the back end, because we know as podcasters and as creators that it can take us quite a bit of time to do all of the editing, writing all of the show notes, the whole process, right? If
Mhm.
you can do your recording in advance and if you can record your stuff in advance, well, that's perfect, because now you can just edit and do all of your other pieces when you have the chance. You don't have to worry about recording the content and editing it and all that all in the same day, which I do know people who do that. And I don't know how they keep up, because I would never be able to do that. I would be too stressed. Out of the two of us, Taly is definitely the planner. She's like, okay, so let's do this episode. I'm like, okay, perfect. Yeah, sounds good. Like, we'll just talk about it. And she's like, okay, no, like, let's create some questions or like, prep a little bit. I'm like, yeah, maybe we should do that. That sounds good. Oh my goodness. I love it.
It's so true. Yes, me too. All right. So next up is workflows. We saw a lot of different tools mentioned, like in the Facebook group,
Mhm.
and like Trello, Notion, all the popular ones that we hear about, like Asana, even spreadsheets. And then Victoria actually mentioned that Calendly, Google Forms, and Trello are part of her core stack. But I'm curious, Simona, like, what's your take on the tools versus the actual workflow?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I think tools are amazing. It's amazing to have tools. And nowadays, I feel like there's a tool for every single thing that you want or need or can create. But where the magic happens is in the workflows. The workflows is the thing that's going to keep you streamlined and that's going to keep you aligned, right? And so in our agency, we create custom workflows for every single show that we create, because no two clients' needs are the exact same. Even if someone is on a similar package, what they individually need is separate. Another reason why I love having everything in Northflow, because I can very easily create a checklist and a template per show versus having to recreate it time and time and time again. So tools are amazing and you can have every single tool under the sun, but if you don't know how to use the tool and if you don't have the right workflow paired with it, it's still not going to increase your productivity, and it still actually might be more confusing for your client or even just for yourself if you're a solo creator than anything else. So I just think that that's really important to keep in mind, because if you want your show to grow, you need to be focusing in on what your actual workflow looks like.
Yeah, and it's not just about organizing. It's about removing the friction, right? You don't need a fancy setup, but you do need a repeatable system that reduces decision fatigue, and it will support your agency's growth, right?
I completely agree with you, 100%. And if you can integrate all of your tools together in a workflow that talks to each other, I'm going to plug Northflow one more time. I promise you that this was not like Tally's probably like, why, not even why are you bringing up Northflow so much? Because obviously, but that's not the intention of this podcast. But when you think about workflows and getting yourself organized, having a systematized like process, having something that is repeatable, because that's been like the number one most frustrating piece for me in other tools that I've used, is there's no like repeat factor. In some there are, but it doesn't check every box for me. It makes it feel just like more work. So anyways, you can have the tool, but if the workflow doesn't work with the tool, then the tool is obsolete. It doesn't work.
Makes sense. All right, so let's talk about staying efficient while managing multiple podcasts, right? So, especially when every single show has its own tone, its own audience, and different goals too, right? You're trying to like not to cut corners or streamlining by blending things, right? So, how do you keep things organized without sacrificing quality?
So each client has its own process. Each client has its own show. No two brandings are the same. No two messaging is the same. So your show individually is always treated as its own brand. And that is so, so, so important, because we don't share templates from show to show. We don't reuse content from show to show. Everything is customized, everything is different. So we use these systems to make our process go smoother behind the scenes. So things like guest management, social media content approval, show content approval, the process overall is the same, the goal is the same, but the way in which we get there is tailored per show, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. So That's one thing actually I love about Northflow. Like we built it so podcast managers and agency can create a custom workflow per show so it doesn't have to be all the same thing throughout, and we still have that repeatable process to start from, so you're not like reinventing the wheel every single time, but you're also never like really forcing two clients into the same mode.
Exactly. So if you have your own template per show, for example, that is where the differences happen. But it keeps it so easy for you because all you have to do is create the template once. And if you don't want to create your own template, well, we've created it for you because there's a Northflow template in there as well. And then you can literally just take that and you plug and play for every single episode. So then if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, is having the content and planning it in advance and creating a production schedule around it. Well, it's perfect because now you have a template to go with it and you can take some of like the brain space out of it, right? Like a lot of the times we feel burnt out, we feel overwhelmed, and there's so many things to do. And if you're thinking about juggling all these different shows, it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to keep track of all of this? But when you create things that make you less stressed and that take those little tiny bits of brain power, if you will, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to remember the process in your mind for client A, B, and C. It already just
Mhm.
exists. You know what I mean? So it makes it way less stressful to think about managing all these different shows. And that's a way that we've been successful from the beginning. I don't ever have to worry about what status each client is at because all I have to do is look at the back end and I know exactly the status of every single episode. Those little tips and tricks help a lot, right? If you're constantly
Mhm.
thinking about the next thing that you have to do, you're always going to feel overwhelmed and you're never going to be able to get ahead on your creation process, never mind juggling more than one show. And then too, also Talia, I want to bring up the idea of your team, right? So obviously at Volt
Mhm.
Productions, it's not a one woman show. Like I have an incredible team of three, including myself. And we do this work day in and day out. But how do we communicate and make sure everyone is on the same page and everyone knows what's going on per show, per client? So those pieces are also really important too. Because if I don't have a system, if I don't have a process, and if I have nothing written down, well, how can I expect my team to follow along,
Yeah.
right? How can I expect them to
Mhm.
know what's inside my mind? So, another reason why the tool is great, but the workflow is the thing that matters the most.
Yes. Okay, so the D word,
Yes.
delegation.
Yes. That's what I was kind of just mentioning, I guess.
Mhm. So, since we're talking about that, why
Yeah.
is it so hard for podcasters to hand off their stuff? Like, like let go and let somebody else do what they do best, which is in your case at Volt Production, like you guys do an amazing job editing and like the overall producing of the show.
Thank you. I think there's a couple of things. I mean, the first thing is the monetary cost, of course, right? Not everyone can afford to do that. And my hope for someone, if you do decide to work with an editor or a producer or what have you, is that that person has in mind your end goals. I think that's really important. So, at my agency, we
Mhm.
focus on the monetization side as well. And we want to create a show that's going to work for you if that is part of your goals, right? So, a lot of the times people can't honestly justify the cost, and that makes sense. But then there's always the challenge of doing everything yourself. That's where you can get into the part of burnout. That's when you can get into the overwhelm. So if you want to keep your sanity. And if you want to grow, sometimes you do have to stretch a little bit and you have to delegate to whoever that looks like, whether it's a production team, whether it's in within your family, whether it's in within your household. You can't possibly do everything yourself. So let's say, I'll tell you, for example, like my partner and I, if I have to do some things for work and then also think about cooking dinner and then also think about walking the dog and then also think about all of the other things. Is there a way that you can delegate even some of your life tasks out to your family unit, if you will, to help you? But I think that if you can and it's possible for you, delegating anything that you can, and also when the time is right, finding someone who can help you, whether that's a VA, whether it's an editor, a producer, someone to help you just streamline. But I think the very first piece is like delegate to your own self. Why not use a tool like Northflow to delegate to yourself the things that you have to do? And you create a workflow for yourself that is always going to support what you're doing and what you're creating. So, those would be some of my tips because it's not always easy to do, but it's definitely needed because you can't possibly do everything on your own. It's absolutely impossible. The only way that I've been successful is by having help from other people in all areas of my life. It's the only way. I'm sure you can relate to that too.
Yes, for sure. And I'm all about numbers and stats. So I actually found out that Harvard Business Review, they found that leaders who delegate effectively, they experience up to a 33% increase in their business growth. So we're not just talking about like passing the work on, but it's also like what's happening, helping your business to grow as well. And that's a stat that should light a fire under all of us. Like we should all be okay with delegating the things that we could pass on to other people to do it.
Exactly. And I think that's like a whole other, I feel like I could go into a whole tangent about this too, because
Yes.
I've had different members in my team and I've delegated in different ways. And my like own leadership style had to evolve and had to, change based off of who I'm working with. Right. So I'm a very hands off, leader. I give the task. I'm like, well, I don't care when it gets done, as long as it gets done by the time we need it by. So if that's you
Mhm.
wanting to work at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m., it doesn't matter to me because I know everyone has their own life. But the delegation piece is super important. And also, it can shift and change on the recipient end of how the person receives the delegation. So, anyways, I just want to add that in. It's kind of cool.
Yes, yes. Also, Simona, I know this one that I'm going to start talking about now, it's close to your heart.
Mm.
So, managing your energy. I know you talk about this all the time. Why is it so important, like to be able to manage your energy?
Oh my gosh, this is so important. So, when you are running on empty and when you have nothing left to give, you cannot give anymore. And people say, oh, you
Mhm.
can't pour from an empty cup. And like, yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I feel like the saying is a little bit overused and it's lost its like, not its meaning, but it loses its punch, if you will. I think that you have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you're never going to have a smoothly running anything. If you are always, I'll say something similar to what I said in the beginning. If you have a chaotic process, you will have a chaotic business. If you have a chaotic life, you have a chaotic business, you have a chaotic show. And I've been there, you know what I mean? There's been so many times where I haven't managed my energy properly and have totally not shown up in the best possible way. You don't really think about what you're going to say before you say it sometimes. And so the more you can stay in alignment with yourself and the more you can take care of yourself, the better outcome for everybody else, right? The better it's going to be for
Yeah.
everybody else.
I'm gonna laugh at this one. It's his name is Drunken Buddha. He was
Okay.
love the handle. Great
Love it.
handle. So in the group, he mentioned that using tools like Riverside FM and ChatGPT has actually helped reduce like his mental clutter. So this way that he could actually focus on the creative work. So he was just using AI to help him organize everything. So he didn't have to
Mm.
put a lot of energy into that.
I love it. I think it's so smart. I joke around that sometimes like ChatGPT is my therapist, is my chef, is my organizer. You know what I mean? Like anytime I feel
Yep.
overwhelmed or I'm overthinking something, I put in a ChatGPT and it usually gives me like a very grounded answer, more logical than
And
me.
I yes, and I love the fact that you can actually talk to it now. So it takes
Yes.
it to a whole new level. Kind of
Yes.
creepy, but you know.
It's so creepy. I was talking to Robin on my team today, and we were just talking about how, using like ChatGPT and all that. But she's so funny. She's like, "Do you say thank you to ChatGPT?" And I'm like, "Yes, please and thank you always,
Yes,
because when
all
the
the
robot
time.
comes to life, like I don't want to be on the bad side?"
Like, "She was nice to me, she was nice to me. He
Yeah,
wasn't very
exactly.
nice.
We will
He
spare
didn't
her.
say thank you." Yep, yep, yep.
So funny.
All right, so let's talk about something a bit more serious.
Mm,
So, and I feel like this is something that gets overlooked a lot, and it's knowing when to stop or when to pause a show in this case. And we could do this from like as a personal show, like if you're a
mhm.
podcaster and you just need to pause,
Yeah.
or if you're actually working with a client and you need to hand off that client, or you need to just like, hey, we need to take some time off.
Yeah. I think that it's so individual, but whatever you're doing and whatever you're creating, in my opinion, should serve either your mission or a bigger goal. If you've lost touch with it, if it doesn't resonate
Mhm.
anymore, you don't need to just do it because you've always done it. So for example, my Happiness Happens podcast has been on hiatus for over a year because I didn't feel in alignment with creating it anymore. And it's something that I will bring back one day, but that isn't where my energy was going right now in this moment. So it's really
Mhm.
important, even within the agency, like every single month we meet with our clients every single month to talk about their strategy, to talk about their guests, to talk about their episodes, monetization strategy, and so on. And I've had in the past that from those calls, people just realize that what they're creating is not
Mhm.
in alignment with them anymore and they want to do something different, right? So it's important to have those check ins, and it's okay to pause. It's okay to take a break. You're not a failure if you do so. Every ending, every pause, every stop is a redirection into where you're supposed to be. That is my belief, anyways. So if you are in that phase, don't be so hard on yourself. And then also, the other thing I'll add too is, if it's a posting cadence thing, so if you're doing a weekly episode and you're really stressed out because every single week you have to get out an episode and you don't have the time to properly promote it, then pause, take a breath, take a step back, and maybe you consider doing a bi-weekly podcast, right? And then how do you promote your content in between, right? So you have both options. You don't have to do something in the same way that you've always done it just because you've always done it that way. You get to do it. Like, you get to do it however you want. You get to create it however you want. So even creating this podcast, we knew that we wouldn't be able to commit to having a weekly show. So we said bi-weekly podcast, perfect. And then every single episode has more intention in it because we have more time
Mhm.
to create it in the way that we want to, as opposed to just publishing episodes just to publish them. There's a lot of noise out there. Don't be part of the noise. Be part of like the
Exactly.
energy that changes and shifts and helps people.
Yes, and the way I see it too, it's not a failure, it's really growth. Like it frees up to something that you could be doing that's even better and it will
Mhm.
something better will come out of it.
Exactly.
And it, again, it's not about quitting, it's about choosing alignment over the actual obligation.
You're so wise, Taly.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Simona. If someone is listening and they're currently drowning in like show management, what's one thing that they can do today to make it easier?
They can go to northflow.io and apply to be a beta tester of our product, because it's absolutely going to change your life and revolutionize the way in which you're managing your show. But if you are not ready for that step yet and you just want to chat about it, you can find us on Instagram and you can send us a message and we are more than happy to chat with you. I always am. I know Tally always is as well, to just,
Hmm.
even just chat, hop on a call and see where you need help. So that is my thought for that. But if you don't want to do either of those and you just want to do it on your own, take a look at your current process, figure out where your bottlenecks are, and just choose one thing differently, one way to make things a little bit more aligned and easier for you.
Yeah, and I would say like find the slowest point and fix it, right? Like
Mm,
what could be fixed on your current workflow, whether, like it's like batching better or maybe automating the guest reminders or streamlining approvals. That one fix can create an instant relief.
I totally agree with you. I love that advice.
All right, so let's go for our final takeaways. So, thank you. You made it all the way to the end. Yay.
Yay, you, and thank you for
And
listening.
yes. So, here are your takeaways from today's episode. So, start with the strategy. Don't forget, start with the strategy. That's super important. Batch like a boss and build
Mm.
workflows that could actually scale, delegate to grow.
Protect your energy.
And remember, it's okay to pause.
Always take a pause. I love to say, Tally, maybe we end on this note, slow down to speed up. That has been my motto. It's something that is easy and tangible and something that you can do right away. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, pause, slow down, and you will speed up.
Yes. And if you're managing multiple podcasts for clients, I really feel you don't have to do it alone. There's like a
I agree.
community out there of, different agencies and podcast manager. This whole community of like the podcast community has been amazing. Like I've learned so much, and community matters. The system matter, and your time, it's really worth protecting.
I totally agree with you. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
Yes, thanks for joining us. And if this episode helped you at all, send it to your fellow podcast manager or agency friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a workflow win again.
I love that. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next episode behind the workflow.